A quiet evening at the Pocantico Hills estate came into its own, and the old elegant man, sitting in an armchair by the window, was distracted from his thoughts. He reached out and turned on the electric lamp, then slowly reached for the bell button. He didn't want to sleep. Let the servant bring him tea. There was still plenty of time for thought. And there's definitely something to think about, at least to summarize some of the results of your entire life when at old age. He made literally billions. Jokes and speculations aside, the first dollar billionaire in the world. A huge influence on the political life of the United States, spending large sums of money on charity. But he was born into a relatively poor family. He is the second child in a family of 6 children. How did he manage to achieve wealth and fame? It's time for him to look into the past and reflect. Greetings from Wealth History. We think the story of John Rockefeller's success will for sure make you think about your own life and maybe reflect a little. And now let's continue this episode. Pivotal Principles of Success. John D. Rockefeller was never an ascetic when it came to people and socialization. He loved to communicate with all kinds of people and always believed that introverted and especially unpleasant and unfriendly people could never become rich. This meant that the ability to deal with people was a great asset in his eyes, and he himself was constantly striving to improve this quality. Even more than that, in his eyes, it was a commodity that could be bought or sold at a great profit, and it's unlikely that he would have made so much money in his life if he hadn't. But for some time now, he began to have enough of what he already had. Now he can think about his own comfort, which is why the richest man in America bought this plot of land, which he took a glimpse at 3 decades ago. And after his child business, the Standard Oil empire, was forcibly partitioned because of its monopoly position, Rockefeller had more free time. Then he built this villa here, where he often came to rest. Unfortunately, or maybe not, but over the years an individual doesn't get younger at all, and even billionaires need to fully rest time to time. According to his own conviction, who works all day has no time to earn money. Simply because there's no time to think properly, take a step back, and make the right decisions. He began to understand this when he was pretty young, when he began looking for a job at the age of 16. The search of job took him 6 weeks. Although he had a 3-month accounting course behind him and he knew mathematics decently well, few people needed a person with no experience in such a field. Nevertheless, his persistence paid off. He was lucky enough to get a job as an assistant accountant in a small company, and here he proved himself, soon becoming a full-fledged accountant. And when the manager of the company left his position, it was immediately given to the young John Rockefeller. And everything would have been outstanding except that he was offered a salary of $600, although his predecessor was paid $2,000 for the same role. John was openly outraged by this, and without the second thought, left the company, much to the surprise of his colleagues. He still remembered the look they gave him while he walked away, but this decision was firm. Why was it, you might wonder? Because he did not tolerate injustice, and besides, even then he knew that he was born for something more than that. He was convinced that his potential lies somewhere else, and he later said that this was what led him to success, advising others to follow this principle of leaving when injustice and thus disrespect takes place. By the way, this job turned out to be the only one in his biography hired for some uncle, because he no longer wanted to depend on the whims of his employers once he understood what's going on. Alright, here Rockefeller was interrupted of his reflections for a while. A servant brought him tea on a tray. As he waited for him to leave, John took a sip from his cup and chuckled, thinking about the fact that all his colleagues at the time had remained, until they all became old, unknown clerks. And all of this is because they gave consent on what they were given in life and didn't strive for more. Always keep your reputation. And soon he had a chance to start his own business, albeit together with a partner. It didn't really matter. He didn't have enough money. He needed $2,000 and only had $800 available at the time. A ridiculous amount for him at his old days, but then he had to borrow it from his father and do so at interest. The new company needed a loan and there was little chance that any bank would provide it. But John was already known for his prudence, and he had made a good impression on the director of one of the banks, so that a much-needed loan was obtained no matter what. Firstly, earn a reputation and then it will work for you. And later on in life, he was convinced of the truth of this more than once, even though he was generally indifferent to the approval of others, and especially those for whom he had no respect. At the same time, John was a patient man, which he learned from his mother, and he was waiting for his chance, which came a few years later when a new lighting device appeared, a kerosene lamp. He quickly realized that everything related to oil would soon become a very profitable business and founded his first small oil company. And when, a decade later, he accumulated more or less serious capital, the famous Standard Oil appeared on its basis, making him the uncrowned oil king of US. One of the richest men in history of America smiled slightly, remembering how he felt when he made a lot of money. Let's note that his family wasn't poor, but it wasn't rich either. His parents had to save and be thrifty, and he adopted this habit from them, without changing it even when there seemed to be no longer a need for saving. Yes, John Rockefeller always took care of money and preferred not to spend it on excesses, although he loved convenience and comfort. But even here he kept his measure, even here in his beloved Pocantico Hills. There were only things that he liked and also made life comfortable. The billionaire winced, remembering those who, having become rich, began to waste their money, demonstrating to everyone the prosperity that suddenly fell on their heads. Stupid people. How many of them were then corrupted and ended their lives in poverty, believing that they had grabbed God himself by the beard? Therefore, when he became rich and his fortune increased rapidly, he tried not to fall into the sin of arrogance, and every day he repeated, "The prideful man boasted but fell into the dust." And in his diary he wrote, "Although things are going well, and it already seems that you're a good businessman, you should not hurry, since you'll lose your head. Are you gonna turn up your nose over this money?" Money's good, but not the most important. And he didn't turn up his nose because he was a modest man, which was largely due to his religiosity, and it was by no means ostentatious. Being a member of the Baptist religious community, John not only attended all the prescribed services, but regularly paid the prescribed tithe, that is, a tenth of his income. Moreover, he personally participated in its activities and even taught Sunday school and served as secretary several times. Yes, in Rockefeller's eyes, no job was beneath his own dignity, and even when he became rich, he still attended his humble church, also just to communicate with people and listen to them. If your only goal is to become rich, you'll never achieve it. Of this he was quite convinced, as well as that there is nothing more contemptible and pitiful than a man who spends all his time in making money solely for the sake of money. Thinking of this, the old man closed his eyes and remembered his wife, Laura. They married when they were both 25 years old and lived together for half a century. His wife gave him 5 children, but only one son, also John. It will be interesting to see how far the boy will go. He has already shown his abilities and that he will not lose his family fortune, as happened to many offspring of the insanely rich. The son was successfully doing business in the fund and was attracted to banking activities. Well, let him continue on his own path. Well, and the daughters will receive such an inheritance that they do not need for anything, and enough, they also know that they are worthy and will appreciate what they receive. John D. Rockefeller was a four-headed man, and he taught his children to do the same. "We'll see you soon, Laura," thought the old man. No, it wasn't a passionate love, but rather a marriage of convenience. But that calculation turned out to be a correct one. His wife always supported him and gave him good advices, which he did not neglect. And he valued her, and in general, family values were of great importance to him. So when she died unexpectedly of a heart attack, it was a truly heavy loss for him. John D. Rockefeller interrupted his thoughts and looked at his watch. Yep, it's getting late, and he guesses it's time to go to bed. He's got a lot to do tomorrow, and schedule is obviously important. Do you know what gives you the most pleasure? To see how the dividends of the effort come in. Apparently, that phrase from his own book came to his mind. Well, a man has benefited from his own efforts and can now say that he has not lived his life in self-love, but rather in peace and love to those dear to him. Thank you for watching. Enjoyed the video? Leave a like and subscribe, as well as watch new episodes which will come out on Wealth History channel.